The theme of this panel is women investment and women founders. Why such little money goes to women founders? What are the structural challenges? How can they be overcome? And as the man on this panel, I will be asking the questions and letting you answer. So we have with us, I'll just briefly introduce everyone, just name everyone and we can start. Maru Winokur from Urania Ventures, based in Berlin. Venture capitalist organization that funds all kinds of companies, but one of the few that supports a majority of women founders. So she'll offer her perspective. We have Morenike from WISPA, who won the Bayer Women's Empowerment Award last year, and she'll tell us more about her organization. We have Maria from Flair, who also won last year, and she will also speak to her experience. And finally, we have Abimbola from My Medicines in Nigeria. So we have Nigeria, Kenya, Nigeria, and Berlin. So if everyone can please welcome our panels. Yeah. So Maru, perhaps I could start with you to just give us the lay of the land. How we all know that women founders have a harder time than men, raising money for their ventures. What are the numbers? How much money goes to women and why? And
okay, but first of all, I'll just some few words about Urania Ventures. So we are a deep tech focused family office venture firm. Deep tech means that we really invest in STEM-driven fields like hard science, and the 60% of the direct portfolio investments are space tech companies. So we are in space tech, biotech, and also robotics and aerospace and quantum computing. So it's really hard science. So we are based in Berlin. The roots are in France. It's a French family office. And when I took over the managing partner responsibility for the investment firm, I wanted to know what's the status quo of our portfolio. And I was super positively surprised that 58% of our direct investments are run and founded by women, and that in the hard science field. And
it's even more impressive.
Yeah, but it's really like they build spacecrafts. And so I think, and when you look at the venture capital scene in Europe, less than 2% of venture capital funding goes to female-founded companies. And one reason we think it is, first of all, that there are less women investors on the investor side. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur since 17 years in Berlin, so I started my first company, like I was on your side. I still feel like being on your side, yeah, because like in 2005, 2006, and since then, not a lot has changed so far. Like there are a few more women investors, but not on the partner level or general partner level. Like general partner level is like managing director level.
Right.
So and what we also do, and where we think, because the family office is really driven by impact, where we think we have the highest efficient impact is also to step into onto the side to change something on the VC side, which is that we also invest in venture capital firms. Yeah, so we are direct investors, but also we are long-term commitments, like space tech is long-term commitment, yeah? Sure. So same long-term commitment as venture capital funds. And 7 out of 8 fund investments have at least one woman partner in the team. This is one like really highly impact measure to change that ratio. And this is also what we do, that we really bring together a lot of so-called LPs, like investors in venture capital funds, to really address that topic, that they can change something, that they just ask the question, how diverse is your partner team or your general partner team, and then invest and deploy capital in those VC firms, because then more female-founded companies get funding.
Yeah, I mean, that's really impressive, and it's an interesting strategy to fund VC firms with women partners. What's shocking to me, and I'm sure to everyone here, is that less than 2% of funding
in Europe.
In Europe, yes,
and goes to female-founded companies, yeah.
And that's just, I mean, as an outsider, I have the impression that society has been discussing these issues for a while. You know,
yeah.
Why is it 2%? Like it just seems completely off the charts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So So we have to do something. Like that's why we say, okay, only VC, like funding into VC firms, that they can only get funding themselves when there is at least another ratio in the team, like a diverse team.
Yeah. And do you think, in a team of partners at a venture capital firm, do you think one, like a minimum of one, that's better than none? But do you think that that's enough to, in your opinion, to?
No, but at least it's a first step. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a first step. So one means already that there's kind of diversity on the partner level, but it really has to be on, I think, on the decision-making partner level. And also, when you look at those teams and VC firms, a partner is not a partner. So there's still a mismatch when it comes to compensation. Like women will still get less so-called carry compensation in VC firms than the other ones. And this is really where we really like ask those questions. So how fair is the compensation?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just like, let's say, a diversity washing of the firms. So you do not need a woman who has the partner title but does not get the compensation or the rights of decision making. Yeah?
Absolutely. So you have to check that, that they have actual decision-making ability, control over finance spending. I'm curious. Last question: Is there a lot of resistance at the partner level from men to include that woman, or if she's included on the management team, to then give decision-making power?
Okay, this is a very personal opinion. I think I distinguish between the old legacy funds and the new funds,
Okay.
and we really only invest in emerging funds, because also when it comes to the diversity of investment landscape, there's much more, like these topics are so to be invested in, not the typical, let's say, quick commerce model. Yeah. So really like emerging funds which really drive also like diverse topics through investing. And I think with the new funds, when you read the news about VC firms, there are much more VC firms coming up that are driven by impact sustainability. And these are the ones that are super open to diverse partner teams and actually started by these. And let's say the old structures, to be honest, I really focus my energy where I have the highest impact. And sometimes I said, okay, let's give everything to the next generation, because sometimes these others, they will die out. Yeah?
It's almost like a lost generation, right?
Yeah.
Well, very important work. Thank you for giving us that perspective, and also for your solutions, which are quite innovative. Perhaps we can hear now from the entrepreneurs and hear their side of the story. And Morenike, perhaps I can start with you. And Wispa, what's your journey been like as a female founder?
So as a female founder, I will say our journey has been not without its ups and downs. I have a male co-founder, and I'm the CEO. So oftentimes, I can almost read the room that if our roles were flipped, things would go a bit smoother. And, as much as that's the reality, it is a painful reality. And I wouldn't say the landscape has changed overnight, but I will say our ability to identify people who are not that biased has improved with time. And I would like to say that we're starting to yield the results. So yeah, for us, it's finally, to a positive spin in terms of our ability to fundraise. Just very recently, we've managed to, lock in at least a third of our, our fundraising goals. So yeah, things are turning around.
Congratulations, yes.
Thank you.
And perhaps you can just tell everyone a little bit about Wispa and what you do.
Right.
For those who don't know.
So my organization is Wispa Health. I am the CEO and founder, and we are a health tech organization that is focused on improving women's access to sexual and reproductive health care. And we do this by making it possible for our users to chat with doctors about anything and everything, but particularly about their reproductive health. And also our users can book appointments for a growing pretty wide range of sexual health services, everything from contraception to cervical cancer screening, vaccination, STI testing, and a lot more. And also our users can purchase products without anyone knowing. So I say this because we are operating in Nigeria. We're operating in a market that has a lot of similarities to many other African markets in terms of how our society, views sex as this taboo topic, as well as in terms of the religious, it's somewhat very religious. There's a lot of religious barriers to accessing sexual health care. So us being able to create this safe space within our mobile app where our users can have a complete ecosystem of care when it comes to their sexual and reproductive health care needs is our driving goal. And we launched going over a year now, and we have had over 7,500 women consulting with doctors on our app. We've locked in our 1,000 appointment milestone, so people booking, various sexual health care appointments. And we've also crossed our 1,500 product sales milestone. So we are at the point where we're, improving, taking our learning points, as well as realizing, on our road to executing our big, broader business plan goals. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. So before I move on to Maria, I just want to mention that in a few minutes I would also open the floor to questions. And so please, we would love for this to be interactive, and it's an important topic. And we'll have the award ceremony later, so it would be great to have a conversation. Maria, you founded Flair.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, tell us a little bit about Flair, your journey as well, but also how winning the prize last year perhaps has changed things for Flair.
Totally, thank you so much. And agree, this is such an important topic, so thanks for highlighting it. As female founders, and I can speak to that from our perspective, fundraising is, I guess as founders, unexpectedly, it's all we do. When you start out and you want to build something, you don't expect that in the end you're just going to be hiring people to do it and then fundraising with all of your time. And I imagine, I can only speak to being a female founder. I've never been a different kind of founder. So I'm biased for sure, and we're so sensitive to that because a lot of times we have these experiences like what you mentioned, and I felt like that was very gendered or biased, but I don't know, and I don't want to say that or assume that. I want to always learn from it and take things at face value. So it is very hard to kind of differentiate those things and really be certain about it. But there's so many examples of it, and then there's the data. Like you mentioned, that less than 2% goes to female founders, and that's undeniable. And I think I just want to add one kind of sad point to that before I then tell you about Flair, if you don't mind, which is just that one of my experiences and thing we've been talking about a lot today, off the stage to people, is different kind of funding structures. And one of the things we've been thinking about a lot is the structure of VC. VC is about having an exit at a later, larger funding round. And so when you know that women are going to always continue to raise less than 2%, I think just even at face value, that might be unattractive to you as an intelligent VC. And I think just from that perspective, obviously these things need to change, and I think they will, but there is this kind of, not necessarily bias, potentially something that looks like a truth on paper to people that might influence your decision. I think, speaking to that, we've been coached, to all the other factors. I'm really glad what you said about speaking to the VCs themselves about their decision making. And from our perspective, we've been coached on all kinds of things, from literally speaking more like a man and how that might,
Right.
And so there's for sure that element. And I can say I hope that kind of goes away and we accept other forms of success and perceiving success. But maybe that's just part of the process to getting us to a place where we then see women can raise more money, and I think, there's that can then suggest that this might be a good VC investment that would pay out eventually. But I think that it's just a really complicated thing, and obviously there's so many other different models besides VC of investment that, for that reason, to me, seem more exciting at this current stage. And then Yeah, Flare is an emergency response infrastructure and a patient logistics digital platform. That's a cloud platform, and we started Flare because 2/3 of the world doesn't have access to 911 or 911-like services, which I think it's really easy for people to relate to how terrifying that is when you don't have a number to call in an emergency. But at a larger scale, in terms of healthcare systems globally, they're pretty much all designed to do referral with a wide distribution of primary healthcare centers, lesser amount of secondary, tertiary referral facilities, and very few specialized healthcare centers on a national level. And all of those systems globally rely on patient transfer logistics, which also 2/3 of the world does not have. So even more profound are like the incredible losses of life and health that happen from doctors being unable to move people through the healthcare system. So that's what Flare is. We've built a digital platform that does that for a tiny fraction of the cost of a traditional 911 system. And we are live in Kenya right now. We have a reach of over 1 million people. And we've reduced response times to just several minutes, where they used to be several hours, which is really awesome to see. Thanks.
That's very impressive. Thanks for sharing that. I'm curious, I just want to pick up on one point that you mentioned, and I'd be interested to hear everyone's perspective. You mentioned sort of fundraising strategies include speaking like a man and adapting, changing, how you behave. Curious if there are other ways that you found you've had to adapt your behavior, or be good or not so great, like.
Oh, yeah, that was such a good question. Okay, I guess I don't really so much see it as like I've adapted my behavior. So in those instances, I understand what there might be to learn from that, and I'm super open to it. But to me, this entire journey, I'm a first-time entrepreneur, has been like learning and growing and changing and adapting. And a lot of it is like I have some like gender-related things about that. But for example, I have an amazing co-founder, Caitlin, and I, we're both women. We started the company together. And so we always pitched it together, which is amazing, because then you always have someone in it with you that's giving you that instant feedback, like right afterwards. And so we're always coming back and being like, okay, well, they really didn't understand, what we do. So how can we do it better? And whenever one of us was talking, the other one was watching. And so it's just constant. Like, we're always iterating on how we communicate. And it's not so much because someone said, like, you should be more like a man at all. It's just more like, and I'll give you one, I guess, because we're on this topic, but it's, by and large, a lot of it is like really good feedback and growth and stuff. But there was one thing, for example, we found that's very similar to in general, like biases against women, I would say, or about women. Is that I have a tech background, so I did all the tech in the beginning of when we started the company, and that was one thing that Caitlin noticed specifically, is like as many times as we repeated that, the question was always like, okay, but we're really concerned that you guys don't have tech in the founding team. And it would be like, we just would iterate it on so many ways of saying it, like to the point that Caitlin was just saying it about like 10 times during the introduction. And those are examples of ways that we have, and I do the same for her when it comes to like her business background, her understanding of finance. I'll repeat it now about 10 times. And I don't know if it's just like a gender thing in general. I would imagine founding teams just evolve that way, because you realize those are things people don't pick up on for whatever reason.
It's almost like it's invisible even when it's in your face.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you. And Abimbola, we've had you before, earlier on the panel, with My Medicines. Curious also, I guess, curious about your journey as a founder of My Medicines, and also, if you could touch upon how winning the prize might have changed things for you last year.
Okay, thank you. So My Medicines started October 1, 2017. And it was really from an idea that I had seen work in other sectors. I'd seen people find it easy to order food and have it delivered to them. And I thought, if you can be comfortable with food that anyone could open and tamper with, you should be comfortable with medicine. And, I just aggregated pharmacies and sold them the idea that, I can give you more access to markets if you give us a discount, and then we'd bring customers to you. So we didn't quite start with fundraising. But I realized that to scale, we needed funds, and then to do a lot of backward integration, we needed funds. We needed funds to buy pharmacies and own pharmacies, and then to own our own products and all. So we went, and we were bootstrapping. We bootstrapped for 3 years. Okay. When someone advised me that you needed a co-founder that, VCs like co-founded companies. And so I looked for a co-founder, but instead they wanted to work for me and not co-found. And one day I just said, leave it. I'm going to approach this alone. And I've been very fortunate. I think there were 3 things militating against. One, I didn't have a co-founder. 2, the fact that you find that many of the people who were raising funds had studied abroad and had either worked with someone connected to Silicon Valley or something, and so had that connection with the West.
Yep.
I had none of that. And then thirdly, this was a company in healthcare, and many times you're speaking to VCs or angel investors who have made their money in finance. And they want to see this sort of growth, the sort of financial impact that you will make that is similar to where they're comfortable with. And I was telling them, we've delivered medicines, and I was trying to tell them the feeling of saving your mom, if a medicine comes to you, and it wasn't quite hitting it until I then stood by the numbers and said, look, this is, so I started talking about numbers. I'm not averse to finance, but I just thought it was important to see the business of healthcare beyond money. But when we started to talk about money, it made more sense. And now,
To them.
To them. Yeah. So I think one of the things we struggle with in social innovation is speaking the language of those who are not looking for impact, but looking for, things they would use to judge it from pure business perspectives. We raised $1.2 million in 2019, and most of it went into the backward integration. So if you ask, have we raised money for my medicines? Not quite, because in itself, it has been, operationally profitable. Now we're raising funds, and we're looking now for funds that are Naira denominated, because our currency has suffered a huge devaluation. And if you go looking out for dollars and someone wants 6x or 5x or so on,
return,
you have achieved that in local currency, but not at all in dollars. So that's also important. Now we're able to speak a story. Now everybody agrees and accepts this single founder concept. They're fine with it. I probably have led many projects that have been in male sectors. So I didn't have that disadvantage of appearing too female. I have spoken and won multi-million projects in male-denominated, so I had that advantage. And I think also your network matters. I come from a network of having worked in Accenture and in such, so I'm a mature entrepreneur, unlike probably someone who is much younger and just starting off and hasn't quite acquired that network. So that network served me. Angel investors invested because someone who happened to have been my boss in Accenture recommended, so that worked also for me. And I think now, even where we're raising, it's a private equity firm, the person who is leading it also is coming from my background. So I think background has worked for us. In my medicines, we've done my medicine, which is the D2C, the direct to consumer. We own a few pharmacies and aggregated pharmacies. Now we own our own pharmaceutical products. We have exclusive right to distribute in Nigeria. What we're looking for is that end-to-end value chain project or offering that makes sure that we can deliver medicines across
Nigeria, and you're also
across
planning
Nigeria and of course across Africa.
Across Africa, yeah. So yes, we have a few questions. We have adapting to cultural, attitudes in men. We have, how do you balance scale and impact? Mismatch between funders and entrepreneurs, and equity, debt, and different kinds of funding, how they're different. So yes, Abi, you wanted to start.
Okay, you did ask, how has Bayer Foundation's award affected? So that was the very first we ever won, the first grant. And since then, we've had 3 more. And I must say, it increased our confidence and our attention to even applying for these programs. Increasingly, we have more of such programs, accelerating your access to funding, but we need much more. We need so many more. I know of an angel network, female-focused, and in fact, that was where I went to present before I then met the angel investor that invested in us. But they meet only twice a year. How is meeting twice a year for pitches effective? It's almost like a tiny, minuscule drop in a big ocean where you have hundreds of thousands of women looking for funding. So probably growing their own skill and growing their interventions might help. And then when I used to run a program for entrepreneurial development, we found that less than 30% of the applicants were females. In fact, at the time it was about 20%. So we had to run a different campaign for females to apply. I don't know if it's a cultural inertia, but we just tend to think that it won't come, so let's not bother. And you just need to find another angle to bring women. My last point is role modeling. Few women would step out and run their own businesses to scale. They'll probably do it for a small problem, but to say you want to build a business that cuts across, goes around, you just haven't found so many examples that are female-led or female-owned. And so we need more to be showcased, and if we showcase them, then more young women would dream to own big businesses.
And that might address what Maria's point as well, that might change the perception of the venture capitalists that women-founded companies can
scale.
Yes,
and
can scale.
run profitable business.
Okay.
Monica, yes, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to chip in. So I think I'll take your question first about balancing impact and profit because it will be tied into my next answer. It is without doubt that my business is very impact-driven. However, as someone who has worked in the sexual and reproductive health space, but in social marketing space, I have seen, the ability to not only deliver impact, but to generate millions of dollars in revenue and be sustainable. And I've worked for organizations that are, originally US-based and then opened the branch office in Nigeria. I worked for DKT. Yet, it seems as if there's a different lens with which that the business model is evaluated when the person driving it is African, like she said, African trained. I was born, raised, nurtured, educated in Nigeria. So it is a different lens all of a sudden. And I think one of the most shocking experiences I'd had was, ironically, with a female, venture, maybe not only female, but I like what Maru said about how sometimes perhaps the woman on the team of partners is not actually a decision maker. I love the term you used. I think you said diversity washing. I don't know, but sometimes I worry that that's actually happening a lot more than we realize. So sometimes you're faced with a very odd dynamics where someone wants to give you a grant, but will not invest in you, will not jump on your equity table. And you're thinking, why are you, this same business model in a different market that isn't African, they jump on your table, but because it's African owned, so you're just somehow falling, falling down whatever checklist they either unconsciously have or perhaps do actually consciously have, of what meets the criteria of a suitable African business. I will also just want to add this. This year is perhaps the first time that I have noticed a lot of African health tech startups finally getting funding. And I remember calling a friend of ours at Salient Advisory to say, oh my God, I'm excited about what's suddenly happening in our space. Because typically, the only safe zone, so to say, or safe sector that investors feel, and really, it doesn't matter whether they're female or, the VCs feel safe to invest in, seems to be our fintech sector. Every other sector is given the side eye, and health, as important as it is not spared. So to answer, I believe that answers the impact and perhaps the question about the females. I'm not saying here that we know every type of investor, but if we were to, look at the percentages, majority are just never exactly as they appear by the time you start to engage with them. And with time, that's why I mentioned that our ability to start to kind of sense where this is going early on and figure out who really does believe in, one, the potential of Africans to actually deliver on African solutions, and two, the potential of a woman to be the leader of that solution, and three, does not see the health sector as a grant or a charity-only sector. The ability to kind of decipher who fits that bill is something that we are learning to hone very well.
Thank you, Monica.
Thanks.
Yes. Maru, would you like to comment on the checklist for VCs?
No, I just wanted to give some hands-on tips, like also speaking from the entrepreneurial heart. Yeah. So one thing is there's what our friend from Danone said. There is a very strong angel network run by women in, I think, in Africa, but also in Germany and nearly every country, also from experienced female entrepreneurs. And one thing is what I also tell, I also personally invest as an angel investor, and to be honest, like all the companies I invested in are women, but what I tell them from day one, so when I invest in, let's say, pre-seed, seed, you really, really have to do your homework, which means doing research, like not pitch, like do only pitch to those who are relevant for you and vice versa. And so first do this homework, and your homework is also to network, start networking, because women tend not to do a lot of networking. Yeah? Men are super great in networking, but you have to go out there and like really present yourself, that your name is out there, your vision is out there, your case is out there. And you have to do also your network to really get yourself access into those relevant, like also women networks. Yeah, and for example, when in your cases, I think you're all like seed, Series A stages. I would really look at, for example, also what kind of investors or like investors, entrepreneurs turned angel turned VC has really a thing for what you're doing. Like a lot of also entrepreneurs, like successful serial entrepreneurs here in Germany, they're super driven by impact and sustainability. And I mean, I think we had a conversation about it, that for example, like Rocket Internet, they had huge businesses and know how to scale. There is some entrepreneurs in Africa who invest in companies and can just like to drive impact now and know how to scale things. They really think about who really is relevant for you and who matches also on a personal level. I know this is a lot of homework, but it saves you so much time and also frustration, when you speak with investors. And also coming back to the VC thing case, I mean, we are a very impact-driven investment firm, but we do also the VC case, because I think when you want to drive an impactful business, it is only sustainable if you can, like, in the end, fund it yourself. Yeah. So you really have to think in this commercial partnership level, and maybe start with grants, strategic partnerships, and then really onboard angel investors, and then find a commercial model, because otherwise it will end sometime. Yeah. And but really, women, please do your homework, network. Get a wing person, a wing man, a wing woman. And also when it comes to mentoring, so I have 2 mentees, but mentorship for me is long-term commitment, which means that I demand a lot from them too. Yeah, I said, okay, this is a vice versa contract. Yeah, I lean in for you, you perform. That's the thing, because so leaning in means really that you lean in, that you also have sometimes the courage to speak up for the person and risk something, that this person moves forward and can deliver the result. Yeah, and so it's so whenever, for example, you get an introduction to a highly relevant investor, be very careful how you prepare well for the person who made this introduction. So sometimes this is something that I give to every female founder who just started, because in the beginning you do a lot of mistakes, but the challenge is that there are still so few female founders, so that every founder, a woman founder, represents all others. So when one investor had a bad experience with you, it's not good. So the chance is very low that they will do it another time. So that everything you do it for all the other female founders. Yeah.
And Maria, we have a couple of minutes. Would you like to close the panel and just offer some thoughts?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree with that. That's a lot of pressure to think.
Yeah.
But it's true. It does sometimes feel like, I mean, I guess I'll close with I always struggle with this conversation because, like I said, I've only ever been a female founder. And I struggle with like generalizations. I think just as a person, I actually am so averse to them. So even when people are saying stuff like, "Well, female founders tend to do this," we just like don't have enough data in general in the world to or even saying like, men are like this. You know, you can't. It's all part of the problem, I think, in the end. And so I struggle sometimes with these conversations too. That they are touching on that, and the more we kind of reinforce it. Just by speaking about it in that kind of like non-careful way, I think we can also kind of not be helping the problem necessarily, but so I think it's really important just to be careful about the biases that we have even as women when we talk about men, and as women when we talk about other women. And I think this is kind of touching on your question about have we found our experiences different with different founders. Besides grants, I wouldn't just break them up by grants, debt, equity. I would actually say everyone has been so different. There's like patterns that we see, but everyone has been so different. And that's where, as I was thinking about your question, I was like, you know what? Like, some of the most strange experiences that we have where we felt like they were about us being women actually came from women-led funds. And so I think that bias about women, whether it's from just the data that we have or just from the world that we live in, I think women are not immune to also holding that bias because we grew up with it as well.
And so to be seen and presented and also work as a founder rather than a female founder just would be hopefully something
I'm okay to be seen as a female founder, don't get me wrong. I'm just personally very cautious and averse whenever I hear a generalization or say one that, my brain is also being like, that's not true, actually, it's a generalization. And I think they're helpful in some cases, but just to that point, I think they can also be part of the problem if we're too bought into them.
More nuanced. All right, last.
Just if this sounds very frustrating, but please do found a company as a woman, because just the fact is that 1% of the global wealth, 1% of the global population holds 45.8% of the global wealth, and this wealth is owned by entrepreneurs, and most of them, by now, the tech entrepreneurs are men. So please do your 2 cents and do the steps and found a company as a woman, because women have to participate in the global wealth of the future. Yeah. So.
But it's not easy.
Well, on that note, we will close this panel. Thank you all of you.